All right, I think we've begun. Hello and welcome to another episode of Colonial Outcast, your semi-friendly podcast that is critical of imperialism. And boy, do we have a lot of episodes dropping this week because the world, mostly actually just Western governments, is pretty insane right now. Things are getting absolutely wild. For example, this weekend, an Israeli offensive into Lebanon might very well happen, which would be calamitous for both Israel in general and the civilians in southern Lebanon in particular, since Netanyahu earlier this year threatened to, quote, turn Beirut into Gaza, unquote. The IDF's main MO, as we have learned, is to target civilian infrastructure. Anyways, the IDF knows it will be bad, that Haifa and military bases in northern Israel will be shut down due to Hezbollah rocket fire. So they've made overtures to the Cypriot government to use air bases in ports like Larnaca in Cyprus to maintain air power and shipping once the front to the north opens up. In a televised address yesterday, or earlier this morning, Hezbollah chief Syed Hassan Nasrallah said, quote, there will be no place safe from our missiles and our drones in Israel in the event of a broader war. Israel, quote, knows what also awaits it in the Mediterranean is very big. In the face of a battle of this magnitude, it knows that it must now wait for us on land, in air, and at sea, Nasrallah added. So the group first showed it could hit a vessel at sea by striking an Israeli warship in the Mediterranean during their 2006 war. Reports by media and analysts have for years indicated that Hezbollah acquired Russian-made anti-ship Yakont missiles in Syria. My Slavic pronunciation is terrible, so excuse me on that one. After its forces deployed there more than a decade ago to help President Bashar al-Assad fight the country's civil war. He also threatened Cyprus, quote, the Cypriot government must be warned that opening Cypriot airports and bases for the Israeli enemy to target Lebanon means that the Cypriot government has become part of the war and the resistance will deal with it as part of the war. So all of this could be solved by striking an agreement, a ceasefire agreement in Gaza. Hezbollah has said it would cease targeting operations into northern Israel and would abide by whatever agreement Hamas came to if a deal was reached. As we know, Netanyahu can't afford to stop the war, and many of his ministers don't want to. So here we are. Now, the Biden administration is trying to balance unconditional support for Israel to get that sweet donor money while trying to appease the anti-genocide crowd before November's election. So straddling both sides of the fence. So apparently Israel is going to do this 11-hour, or has begun last Saturday, doing this 11-hour tactical pause for humanitarian aid, I guess. And I don't want to get into too much politics in this episode because we feel like that it's time to revisit what is happening to and with civilians on the ground in Gaza. So we've invited Zeena Aqel back on to do just that. You may know her. She's a prominent Palestinian activist and journalist. You can check her out on social media linked below, and has contacts on the ground or is going through third parties in order to keep them safe. Thanks so much, Zeena, for coming on.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Greg. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. So Mark is actually co-host of the show, is currently interviewing a doctor in Gaza right now, but her connection is so terrible and she keeps dropping out and her iPhone keeps losing battery, or iPad keeps losing battery. So that episode is going to take a long time to edit, but we're kind of going for the macro picture right now instead of like a single human story with this episode, and kind of a freeform discussion. So I would like to begin by playing this NBC news piece about the IDF, quote, tactical pause, and begin with your reaction to it, the disparity between what the news is reporting and what you're hearing is actually happening on the ground. So it's 3 minutes, y'all. It's just going to contextualize this whole tactical pause, and then we're just going to open it up. So here we go. Strap in.
Have been waiting for. Hundreds of trucks loaded with food aid, taking advantage of what the Israeli military is calling a tactical pause. For 11 hours each day, starting Saturday, Israel has pledged to stop fighting on a roadway leading from the Kerem Shalom crossing deeper into Gaza.
This new initiative, which began on Saturday, allows international organizations to move on the route without having to first coordinate. This gives them greater flexibility, and we hope to see it increase the amount of aid making its way to the humanitarian zone.
Aid workers have been in dire need of protection. The United Nations said today the Gaza Strip is the most dangerous place for them in the world. At least 250 have been killed there in 8 months of war. This tactical pause is supposed to help this much-needed food aid get into the Gaza Strip. But on the Israeli side, the announcement caused confusion and controversy. Right-wing politicians blasted the decision. Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir said whoever made it is a fool who should no longer be in his job. The IDF has been struggling to explain.
This is what we call tactical pause. It made a little confusion in the Israeli media. They thought that we're doing a ceasefire. We're not doing a ceasefire.
An Israeli official said that when Benjamin Netanyahu heard about the pauses this morning, he called them unacceptable. The UN warned last week that parts of Gaza face famine-like conditions.
Nowadays, malnutrition is a common case, came to the hospital every day.
Children are bearing the brunt. The UN said yesterday that 32 people had died of starvation, nearly all of them under age 5. This mother says her baby son is desperate for milk. In many cases, hunger is an added ailment, piled on top of other diseases and wounds of war. Razan Mohesen is only 5 years old. She's afflicted with a serious rash, in addition to severe malnutrition and a protein deficiency. But amidst the tragedies in Gaza, the U.S. is struggling to quiet a second front. Amos Hochstein, a senior U.S. diplomat, met with Israeli leaders today to try to prevent a full-on war between Israel and Hezbollah.
Okay, we already kind of touched on that at the beginning. Okay, so at least NBC is now focusing on, some of the actual victims of this genocide for a change, showing disturbing images of starving children and stuff. But they're not really questioning whether or not this tactical pause is actually giving any sort of benefit. I mean, what are you hearing, and what do you know about this whole? Is it just a propaganda piece?
It is always a propaganda piece. When was Israel honest about any approach at since the beginning of this war or in the past 75 years? How many times did they dedicate like a safe road, and they were like, we will not, this is like even in the beginning of the war, if I'm going to take you back to when the war started and they were displacing people from the north to the south, and they were designating safe routes, and that's what they called them, and people were getting attacked as they are entering like those safe routes as they were labeled. People were getting shot while they're walking with their families, just trying to flee and survive at that point. When it comes to the tactical pause and what they're trying to promote, they're trying to show the world that we have sympathy, like we are trying to feed the people that we already starved. Like this is a crisis that they created when they did not allow the humanitarian aid, all the food, medication, everything. They did not allow it for months and months to continue and just hold it at the border. At this point, they created a huge crisis that you need thousands of trucks on daily basis to even get near solving the issue. These areas are crowded. There is not even a good plan into how this aid is going to be distributed on people. And they just been doing that over and over again. Right now, what's happening, there's a huge division, as you saw in that report, there's a huge division in the Israeli government with Netanyahu and his and everyone. And he even said, I don't know if you heard that quote, he said this is a country with an army, not an army with a country, because he has opposed this. He does not want this pause to happen. What we've been seeing on the ground as well is that some humanitarian aid trucks are just entering, so they can say these humanitarian trucks are entering. They said we will be giving aid to the north, and not even close to enough trucks are entering the north. So it's always propaganda. It's always not really what's needed. It's always the Israeli army or the Israeli government in general, they play a game with the media to show that they are trying to do what is needed. And it's all just about the public opinion. Because when you hear as someone who's not going to dig deeper into this, or you don't speak to someone on the ground who are starving, people are sick. And we've been saying that for months. When you don't speak to them and you hear that they're allowing this 11-hour pause on daily basis, then you think honestly that it's a good thing for those people. But that's what about other areas? It's just this street that's not going to be bombed for the 11 hours. It's not a ceasefire for that time. They're just not going to shoot the 8 trucks that are coming in. And right now, I don't know if you saw the report that's coming. they were saying that the issue is like they did not allow all the trucks coming from the UN, and they're blaming the UN. They say they have a problem with their organization, like a problem within their organization, that don't have enough trucks. Like I could hear all of the excuses in the world, but you telling me the UN doesn't have enough trucks. Like we've seen thousands of trucks like lined up on Rafah for months right now. So it just takes you back to when I ask someone on the grounds, like, how are you guys doing? And they're like, there is no medication, there is no food. So what who do you believe? I believe the people that are on the ground. I don't believe like a government official that's like telling us what people are what people want to hear, what an American voter wants to hear, basically.
Right. This kind of it's all performative too. Like I remember a few months ago, I think it was in January, or was it one atrocity bleeds into another. I think this was in December, where they were letting aid trucks in with medical supplies, but it was all just like COVID vaccines. It wasn't it wasn't painkillers. It wasn't anesthesia. It wasn't antibiotics. It was like, well, at least, they don't have COVID. And that was just like one example.
Yeah, that's one example. One example also, like when in the beginning, even when the aid trucks were let in after holding them for a while in the beginning of the war, and then President Biden went up on and he was like in a press conference, like they let aid trucks in. They were full of coffins. There was like no food in them. That was not and I remember, because the people I know from there, they were like, okay, so guys, the help came in. We are finally good. And they're holding their coffins. There's like one female, one male, different sizes. They were like preparing them just to die. And it was really, really hard to watch. They were having some kind of sense of humor, making fun of it. It's like, so we've been like waiting for food and this is what you send us. But at the same time, that is the reality. They say food trucks are coming in, but they don't say what's in the food trucks. They say, medical aid is coming in, and then they don't send them the needed, like what's needed for people who are getting bombed and injured. I've heard like there's not enough anesthesia, there's not enough antibiotics. So people who are getting a surgery, or people who are going after they have an injury, they can't take the antibiotics. I have seen footage. And it's all when I say I have seen footage, it's footage that we can provide, but already we are censored aggressively towards anything we're trying to raise awareness of. But we've seen wounds, and I'm sorry to say, with worms coming out of them, because there is not really the ability to have the basic care when it comes to people in Gaza. This is just, I'm talking about the medical supplies. I'm not saying they're looking for luxury and food and they don't like what they're coming for them. They have nothing. When you look at people in the hospitals, when I speak to one of my dear journalists, and he's in the hospital sick all the time from the type of food he's eating, the canned food that he's been eating for 9 months now. He's sitting in the hospital and he's holding his own fluid. And he's sitting on the floor and he's surrounded by blood, because no matter how much you clean, you don't have supplies. The situation over there is not something we can ever connect to our reality, because it's not something that has ever been experienced, not in this lifetime, not in our generation. I've never seen anything like this. We are looking at them honestly, and is when I see people comparing it to movies, like horror movies, and they're like, oh, this is like the Hunger Games. It is a situation where it feels like sometimes it is based on fiction, because you can't imagine, Greg, being injured and sitting on the ground, surrounded by dead bodies and blood and everything, and there's nothing that's happening. I am asking people, have you eaten anything fresh in the past few days? Because it's been Eid, and if you know, Eid al-Adha is one of the biggest holidays in the Islamic culture, Islamic religion, sorry. And in our culture, when in Eid, we eat together, and they were like, oh yeah, we had rice, but we didn't have any meat, and we didn't have anything. So we were writing down on a piece of paper meat as as a joke. So they're still trying to survive this. But then when you talk to them about what's happening to them, they are honestly feeling hopeless. I can't get a journalist at this point to I speak to them on daily basis, but I can't get them to go up on Instagram and do a live anymore, because they feel like they're like, what else can we say? How many times can I say to people that I'm starving and my family is starving and my people are starving? It's like, how many times can you say it? And then they look online, they look at those like different articles, and they're like, yeah, 8 trucks are coming in. Israel is vouching to let like 8 trucks, and there's like a tactical pause and all that. This is not what's needed. Like, this is not what they need. They need they need to be held accountable for starving these people.
Yeah, and I just wanted to circle back to the whole coffin story. I mean, I've heard that as well. I mean, that's pretty much confirmed that they did let in coffins, and that's a conscious choice, because we know the bureaucratic red tape they've put in place with inspections to see what goods can go into Gaza and what goods cannot. So when they let in coffins, that's a conscious decision. It's like, okay, we're going to stop the flour trucks because we've created this narrative that flour can be used to make bombs, to make IEDs, improvised explosives. It's actually not. Newsflash, but we can let in coffins and COVID vaccines, which don't have any real medical benefit now, and you can bury yourselves. So it's actually kind of really dark.
What kind of a situation? Like, what are you trying to make them feel at that point when you let in coffins and you let them watch, like, open all these trucks and just have, here's different sizes for you and your family.
Well, I would, if I was a terrorist, I would definitely only let in coffins. So there's that. So bringing up, just to give some geographical context for the viewers. Now, if you're listening to the audio, you won't be able to see this, but so apparently this aid is supposed to be coming in through the Kerem Shalom crossing, and it's coming in from Israel, not Egypt. And even though the IDF currently controls the Rafah crossing, because they've occupied the Philadelphia corridor, which is the space between Egypt, the Egyptian Sinai, and Palestinian Gaza, which is not supposed to be occupied by IDF forces. That's supposed to be border security, is supposed to be enforced by the Egyptian government, and it's actually in contravention of the Camp David Accords that they occupy the Philadelphia corridor. Anyways, they control the Rafah crossing, but they're not letting any aid in through the Rafah crossing. They're only letting aid in through Israel and the Shalom crossing. And so, as you can see, it's way in the south. Now, there are these routes that are supposed to go up into the northern Gaza, but as you can tell, like this, just from a military operation or humanitarian operational perspective, the fact that you're trying to get aid, saying you're trying to get aid into northern Gaza, why wouldn't you just go through the Erez crossing, right? Why are you going all the way down here to drive massive trucks that can't maneuver through rubble all the way from the south up along the shoreline? Because this route, the red route, is apparently closed, and then they have to turn right at Deir al-Bala, go across the Wadi Gaza, which is now an Israeli military road, which they could also use for aid, but no, and then drive all the way out through blasted Gaza City. So literally the furthest point south to drive to the furthest point north, when they could just open up a northern border crossing to get aid in there. It's almost like this is all bullshit.
But I want to show you something. If you go down too, we've seen so much footage of like even Israeli illegal settlers trying to stop the 8 trucks, attacking their truck drivers. Yeah. Have you seen those? Like they came like multiple. They were reported in different like news outlets, like how those Israeli illegal settlers that are staying on those borders, they're trying to block the 8 trucks, and they were chanting and like actually throwing rocks and trying to block the roads, coming after someone who is driving an 8 truck, endangering their life. Of course, like they've like it's like a mob, and they're saying that the Palestinians in Gaza don't deserve food to come in. They don't deserve aid to come in. So they tried to block it multiple times. And as you can see also from the Kerem Shalom like crossing, when the accusations of a problem in the UN organization, and they're not really efficient in delivering the aid to Gaza, that's like Israel has nothing to do with it. They actually said the problem is there is fighting that's happening between Hamas and like the Israeli army, and there is a track record also of since October the 7th until this day of the Israeli army having no problem at all killing aid workers left and right. Hundreds of aid workers have been killed in Gaza by the Israeli army, and it's been confirmed. And it's always like, oops, we made a mistake. So right now the UN is saying it's like there is fighting, or we don't feel like you don't give us a safety, like there's no safety measures over there, so we're unable to cross safely some of the times. And it's a situation again that they're creating, but then they just go and accuse that there is like someone else is not doing their job while they're making sure that everyone's job is not, getting done. The other day, the UNICEF spokesperson was actually in a convoy going north with an aid truck. And he said, after they got all the clearances, after they gave them the okay to actually pass with that truck, they stopped at the checkpoint going north. And after 5 hours, that truck was turned away after 5 hours of waiting. So it's just like adding all these hoops and like making it difficult for UNICEF, making it difficult for the UN to actually like UNRWA for anybody to deliver trucks has been the issue of delivering aid for people of Gaza. It's not like the aid doesn't exist. It's not like they are unable to provide aid for Gazans. There is aid, but the UNRWA has to fight a fight inside to protect their workers, who they lost like hundreds of their workers already. They've also have been fighting like on the international stage of defending themselves, losing funds from the US, getting like attacked and getting slammed by politicians trying to raise funds. And then you have the UNICEF on the ground who have a spokesperson, and you can find him online. The UNICEF spokesperson shows you exactly the trip, how it goes, and how he sits for 5 hours with the truck. And he's like, they turned us away, although we had clearance. They went through the truck. They said, we can take it to the north. And this is just more people in the north that are like just going to need medication and they're not going to get it. So I feel like at a certain point, someone need to really interfere. So I'm like, that needs to stop. Like this game of like the food trucks and the aid. Even in the north, there was like a small amount of time when they allowed like aid in the north, and now we're back to the same issue. Now they're starving again. Like I remember sitting with you actually on this podcast when you first started, and we were speaking about how they were starving in the north. And then there was like a time they allowed some aid trucks to enter. And they were like killing people as they were trying to get flour for their kids, shooting at civilians while they're trying to get some aid after like starving them for months. And now we're back to the same situation.
Yeah. I think the main theme here is that this entire whole tactical pause is just another stunt and a long stunt. Like we could go into the aid port if we wanted to set a precedent for how Israel does things. Like we know it, but another sham that really highlights, I would say, U.S. complicity in this absolute farce would be the Gaza aid port. First of all, the U.S. could have pressured the Israeli government to just let in aid. They didn't. So what the solution was, a $32 million J-Lots joint landing over the shore.
32 or 300.
Yeah, it was like 320 million or 32 million. I don't know. It was a lot.
It is a lot of our taxpayer money. That's what I'm just going to go.
Yeah. I think it was 320 million actually, because those things are incredibly expensive, the joint landing over the shore platforms. So it took 2 months to construct. I talked to some Navy CVs, which are like construction guys that work in the Navy. It's like, I've never, like we made a J-Lots during Hurricane Katrina. And let me tell you, didn't take 2 months. So that took really long.
And it floated away, right? Didn't float away. This one, not the one you built, not the one you built. I'm talking about this one. It floated away, and they had to bring it back, right? At a certain, like.
Well, yeah. Okay. So yeah, the J-Lots was constructed. If you look at the map, I'm going to add the map. Okay. So it was constructed right next to, right at the end of the Wadi Gaza, which the Netzarim corridor, which is now an Israeli military road that bisects Gaza into two, thereby limiting freedom of movement from north to south, by the way, ending in the U.S. pier. So the U.S. J. Lott's pier is what was constructed. And now no significant aid came through the pier. At least one dispatch from the World Central Kitchen, a massive food ship, landed on the jetty or near it. 6 World Central Kitchen personnel got off, started giving food out, providing that aid. And then they got into a convoy a couple months ago, cleared with the IDF. They had their vehicles marked on the top of each vehicle, World Central Kitchen, which, any pilot and any drone pilot clearing an airstrike would be able to see. They did a triple tap strike. One vehicle got hit. The second, they relocated to a second vehicle. That second vehicle got hit, all the while giving up radio calls and VHF traffic, all the while that being ignored by the Israeli Defense Force. And then the third vehicle got struck and they all died. And so the Israeli military said it was a mistake. They tried doing damage control, saying that there could have been like a Hamas terrorist, but no one bought it. And they was like, oh, there was a Palestinian. We had bad intel. And then it was straight up, oh, yeah, it was a terrible mistake. Well, I used to target kinetic strikes in Afghanistan. And I know the technology. I know the procedures used because it's all our equipment. They use all of our equipment to do it. So it wasn't a mistake. It was completely intentional. They intentionally killed these aid workers in order to make it unsafe for aid workers to go in. They said it was a mistake, but that was just for the media. But everybody in the NGO world who works in conflict zones knows what to look for if a strike was just an accident or it was targeted. It was targeted. So they're like, well, they're going to intentionally kill our aid workers. So we cannot send our aid workers back in there. And so that just put the kibosh on actually sending in workers, humanitarian aid workers in there. And so, but it's all bullshit because it's just a lot cheaper than spending $320 million on this stupid pier.
Just thousands of trucks from Rafah crossing go in. Well, we talked about this. I actually remember. I don't know if you remember. I think the worst time also when they were throwing I know it's like the parachutes
the aid airdrops.
That was my first question. At a certain point, okay, Jordan started it because they started it. They don't share a border, but then suddenly Egypt is dropping. I'm like, you can open the door. Is it just cooler to drop aid? And then honestly, the saddest part that they were killing people. I've spoken to people that they actually got. They got damaged, that where they're staying. Some people actually died. Some people got injured by those parachutes that were dropping on them. Not just that, the majority of them, they were falling in the sea. So people had to go into the water to get them. And people were drowning. It was just you've created, honestly, that what's happening. They've created an issue where there is no option except you will accept anything from the US, like a pier, that's a port that's that expensive, that will be used for other purposes. Obviously, it's not being used to deliver aid because we don't see aid coming out of there. And then you made the situation really, really difficult that the UN and other organizations are so scared for the lives of their workers because you are actually killing them. You're not even threatening, you're killing them. You're sending those workers back in a body bag. And the crime they've done is absolutely they should be protected, just like the journalists you're killing. So you've shown the world, everyone in this entire honestly, and I think they've shown everyone in this entire world that they have no red line. They have no respect for any civilian life, whether it's a Palestinian, whether it's any nationality at this point. It's what they want to do, and they're going to continue to do it. It doesn't matter. Whoever is in their way, whether it's an American or someone from Europe or some Palestinian, they're gonna kill them. They don't care. And all that happens when we were also scared about them going into an invasion of Rafah. And now we're and we heard this is this is the red line. This is where the US draws the line. Biden said it multiple times. And then they were in Rafah and they were we really can't confirm they're in Rafah. And I was like, can someone can I take Biden on an Instagram live with someone from Rafah? I can show him what's going on. Like the idea of the denial is like, we can't confirm. Like, I honestly can't hear anymore. We can't confirm. This investigation hasn't been concluded. We're not sure that people are starving in Gaza, while every single humanitarian organization is coming out with a report that's telling us and telling the whole world what's really happening. So why are we still sitting here listening to some bullshit where people are telling us we're not sure? You are sure, you just can't afford to say it.
Right. And you know, we haven't actually been hearing a lot out of Rafah from like a civilian perspective, because, you know, everyone's just focusing on the military aspect, because it's honestly easier at this point. Like, how many images do you need to see of abject human suffering before it's like, you know what, it's just easier to focus on like the war in the north with Hezbollah, and, you know, maybe even talk about Ukraine now, and not focus on the actual humanitarian catastrophe. So according to open source news reports and IDF's own proclamations, they've cleared into like 3/4 of Rafah by now. Where have all those civilians gone? Is there any like aid? Is there like any food? Like, what's the distribution like?
There's not even slightly enough food for people over there. People are really getting almost no food. The the aid that came in before, also you want to remember that those people have lost any kind of hope of this war ending anytime soon. So they were being, honestly, I don't know if I'm gonna say being careful with it, or they were so scared to, like, eat everything they have and like go with everything they have, uh, because they didn't know when is the next time. They didn't know when is the next time they're going to be able to eat, when is the next time an aid truck is going to be allowed in. And that's the way they're living. People don't feel, and I don't know how much, like, people don't eat like until they're full. That feeling is not something they can recognize anymore.
They're rationing food.
Yes, exactly. It's just like you're trying to survive. People over there, like, they try to share as much as they can. You see some of footages, and I feel like we romanticize this, the crisis that we're seeing a lot, where we look at like some young men cooking in a big pot, and like a lot of kids that are like 6, 5, 4, or like, some of them are 3 years old, and some of them are like as old as like 15, standing in the longest line trying to grab just whatever they can carry with them from in a hot, like in that, from a hot meal in that pot, and trying to walk back all the way to their family. And then they feel like they have just brought food back to the family. So there's one journalist, her name is Dua. She actually interviews those kids. So she asks them, so it's like, who you're taking the food for? And he's like, and the kid will like name 4 or 5 people that are sitting at home, or like, he's like, oh, I'm going to take this food back to them. And those people are also trying to find build a shelter, or these people are trying to go get like some medications for this family. So we put those images, we see those footage, and we put music to it, and then it's like, oh, a sweet situation. There's nothing sweet about what we're seeing. It's really crazy that this child should have been in kindergarten or first grade. He has missed a full school year. They have not attended school this year. Those children started school in September, and after 1 month, this war started. And then for the past 9 months, all they're doing is actually they're just trying to survive. Who haven't been killed, who hasn't lost a limb in Gaza from those children, is standing on lines every single day to get food. There's no, like, it's not safe. And some kids, you ask them, like, have you eaten today? He's like, no, I don't like this, I can't eat it, but I'm still like standing here because there's nothing else for me to eat. These are babies, these are children. And then you don't see any kind of attention on what's really happening on the ground. All the media is like cares about right now, unfortunately, everyone, I'm not even actually excluding anybody, except like some independent journalists on social media, people like you, people like are like actually trying to tell the truth about what's happening. They go into details. All that everyone is discussing right now is like, how many aid trucks have been driven inside. Okay, so what's like the percentage of people who those trucks are going to feed? Do we
Well,
know?
yeah, I mean, of course, because dealing with mathematical figures is less is less uncomfortable than dealing with actual human beings and thinking about what they're going through. So I did kind of want to focus now, if you on whether you've heard anything about like what are people's interactions with Israeli troops on the ground.
Oh, it's always terrible. So, oh
Yeah.
my God. I was like, every time there's an interaction that's happening, oh, first of all, you don't see footage because you don't show them that you have your phone on you,
Because
and
they'll shoot you.
they will search you, and you're lucky to actually have survive an interaction with that troop without being taken and tortured for months and days. The interactions that are happening, we see a lot of women and men that are being taken as like for whatever reason it is, because they want to take people. They take them to detentions and they get released. Some of them days later, some of them weeks later. So whenever there is a raid like of a hospital or something, they take all the aid workers, they take the admin, the admin workers, they take anybody that's in their face, and they release them later on because they are civilians. They have done nothing. If they are like the way when they share these footage of those kids and men and women that are being taken away, dragged, stripped out of their clothes with blindfolded, they don't tell you how many people they return, because they do return some people because those are civilians, but you still treated them like they are actually like someone who actually like did a crime. They have not done a crime. They take them, and honestly, every single person that has been taken by the Israeli army is in a huge shock, mental shock. They will need extensive therapy to forget what happened to them with them. The torture, the humiliation, the sexual abuse, the words they tell them. I've spoken to a couple of women that have and also these are like videos you can find online. So anything I share with you is also stuff that we can attach those videos in a comment, and people can see them if they can, because we can't share everything. We are unable to share absolutely everything. But women have said how when they were like blindfolded and sitting down, they spend the whole time like just threatening them, like we're gonna do this to you, we're gonna do that to you. Like they use so many sexual threats because they know how important to these women, like that they feel safe, and they make sure that they don't feel safe for 1 second. They threaten them, they scare them, they touch them, and they do all kinds of crimes. Nobody talks about it. Absolutely nobody talks about it. And the problem is, Greg, and I'm going to be very honest here, the problem is a lot of not just Western media, also out the media in the Middle East does not cover these stories, because for them they think like those women like should preserve some of their pride for that, like we don't want them to talk about what happened to them, and it's sad and it's crazy. You can't hide these crimes because those women they've been through it. You can't just hide it from the world. I shared multiple stories about women who have spoken about the pain they felt, like the pain they felt when they were making them stand in front of other detainees, and they were asked to just like look at each other, and like just some kind of like psycho games those Israeli terrorists were doing to them. And people were upset. They were like, they're in pain, you shouldn't share their pain, so we shouldn't talk about it.
No. So it all comes from a place of we don't want to report on this because we are trying to preserve their dignity or something.
Yes, and I don't agree with that approach. Absolutely don't agree with that approach. If one of them chooses to speak out, we should give her a platform, and should let her speak out. And many have came forward and spoken, and many men have spoken about what happened to them as they were getting detained. And like we've seen, like I think in the past week, we've seen footage of a child that was released from being detained with an Israeli soldier, and he was unable to speak. All he just can say is like Israeli soldier repeatedly. So the interactions with them, honestly, what I've heard from the ones that haven't been detained is just like they try to provoke you. Like you can't look at them. They don't allow you to look at them. If you look at them, they're like, this is it. Like your chances are you're going to get detained. If you're a journalist, you're hiding your equipment or you're abandoning it. I have like multiple friends who have abandoned all their equipments to move from point A to point B.
Like
because,
to get through a checkpoint?
took it to a checkpoint, because if you're a journalist, you're being targeted. So those troops on the ground are not the ones that, like, they're not keeping they're not like staying away from the Palestinian civilians. No, they're actually harassing them actively, and you don't see it, because what are you going to do? You're going to carry your phone and report on it and take a video of it and get shot on the spot. Like, they will kill you on the spot if you're lucky. That's what they say. If you're lucky, they will kill you. If you're not, they will take you, and nobody knows what's going to happen then, or if you're going to return. And this subject itself, it's going to be like, there has to be like major investigations, and I'm sure we have not even heard 1% of all the things that are happening to those Palestinian detainees that are being taken away from Gaza, thousands and thousands of them.
Well, here's how it usually works. Okay, so some women are taken and they're not released, right?
That's true.
So the ones that they release aren't going to be the ones that they do the worst things to. The ones that they do the worst things to are never going to be released, for obvious reasons, because they are still trying to control some information. Like, they're really bad at presenting a good face, but like, we already know what's happening to the men. We know that, they've had zip tie handcuffs on for so long that the circulation has been cut off and their tissue has been necrotized by lack of blood flow. So they have to have amputations. So that's happening, I'm sure. Just like any other wartime atrocities that happen, what comes out in the next few years is going to be way worse. This is just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. Yes. So that's.
I want to thank you also for highlighting what's happening to those civilians inside Gaza, because right now, as we said, like, everyone is just dealing with numbers and what's happening with the military and what is happening with Lebanon, and like what's the updates on like the big picture of when it comes to military. But they have abandoned what's really happening to civilians inside, because when you try to talk about it, everyone right away like questions your credibility, just because you're not I'm just gonna say, like, you're not white.
Yeah.
But if you are, they've made all kinds of claims and with no proof, and everyone believed them. Well, we don't have claims, we have proof, we have witnesses, we have eyewitnesses, and we have victims, and we have survivors that have been through this, and you still don't believe them, and you don't want to even talk about it.
Well, yeah, people should be reminded that witness testimony is valid in international law. It's actually valid enough to convict people for murder. So, their whole thing is like, why? Well, they're lying. They're lying. It's okay. Well, I mean, this probably just comes from a racist supremacist perspective that you don't believe them, because, again, witness testimony is enough to convict for murder for life. So that was one of the things. Okay, so we talked about interactions with Israeli soldiers. Not good. If you look at them, they'll see you look at them, and then they'll take an interest, and taking an interest is bad for your health and psychological well-being, obviously. So the last section, I was like, okay, so when aid is distributed, are there any like gangs or rackets going around controlling aid, hiking up prices? Because this always happens.
It always happens, yes.
Yeah.
And the thing is, speaking to people in Gaza specifically, they were divided into two sides. Some of them, they were like, no, this never happens. Those people that are like trying to sell their aid, or like to sell whatever they got, it's because they're trying to get something else. So it's more of like a trading. Like for them, they need diapers, but they will let go of medication, or they will let go of food and exchange it for diapers or formula for their babies. But there is no way that we can deny that there's like the existence of those that can actually like use a situation to their benefit. That exists in every war, that exists in almost like every community. And I would say it was a little bit more. I heard way more stories about it before the invasion, before this, what's happening right now in Rafah. In the past, I would say month, like we've heard maybe less stories, but that may be because they normalized that situation. But under 100% that has happened. And the denial of that happening is just because sometimes people don't want to feel like your own people can do something like this to you. But I'm just saying it's time of war, and they are in war, and we can't really paint a picture that's not realistic. We can't just say that everyone 100% is on the same page and everyone is doing the exact same thing, and everyone, because there is mobs, there is people that are selling. I heard but it's because of a need that's been created. So
Right.
for me, I'm not justifying their actions, but when you starve people, when you create a situation where those people can run free, they will run free. You can't blame the people of Gaza for trying to buy a bag of flour for $1,000 if they haven't eaten for months. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And people are always going to price gouge, especially during a time of war, like become the king of rats. That happens all the time. And of course, people back in America is like, look at these people just turning on each other like
I was gonna
animals.
talk about they're
Yeah.
look
And
at that, guys.
I was like, bro, you were ready to shoot someone over toilet paper during COVID. Shut up.
Come on, we were fighting. They had to limit you. They had to limit you to two, like one. You're only allowed to take one toilet paper. I'm like, I'm picking one for my friend. They're like, I'm like, what's going on? I'm actually picking one for my friend. But
So to pretend like Americans wouldn't turn on each other during a supply chain crisis is insane. People were getting in fist fights again over paper towels during COVID. So it's just
shelves were empty. Like whenever there's like a snowstorm, shelves are empty. Prices go up. How much did you pay for face masks at a certain point? I'm sorry, how much was, like, before the government gave us like the free COVID tests? How much was a COVID test?
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is, if you're letting the aid trucks that exist, that have been carrying aid for months and months outside of Rafah, if you would let them in, this is a situation where nobody will be able to do this. You're creating a situation where people can actually behave this way, and the only solution for it is allowing aid trucks. And I can't say this enough. I feel like we've said it so many times, and everyone knows what to do. And I'm like, I really think everyone knows that this is the only solution, but they just don't want to do it.
Well, also, I just want to talk about one last propaganda point, and we got to get to it. The military reason for not letting aid in is Hamas takes it all. Yeah, I know. Really, there's
really
there's no evidence.
That's what you're gonna go with, that's
there's just no evidence to support it. They haven't released any declassified intelligence documents about it. They haven't shown any drone footage of militants with AK-47s coming up to an aid truck, blasting civilians or holding off civilians at gunpoint and then taking the aid. The evidence just doesn't exist. So
because they don't want to admit use the words of this is collective punishment, that we're punishing the people of Gaza over what's happening between us and Hamas. We're using the civilians as to create a crisis, and then when there's when we created this crisis, that's the thing, this is all created by the Israel and supported by the US. 100%. Because every time when in the beginning we were saying there isn't not enough food trucks that are coming in, the US would come out and they're like, we have no evidence, we're waiting for the reports. I'm like, come on, make a call,
Yeah.
So it was supported.
Yeah, we know everything that's going on in Gaza. We've been running 24/7 surveillance missions with Global Hawks and very fancy drones monitoring communications, and we have literally everything on video. We have drones that can literally map and take in a 5-mile radius on video. And we can not only have that 5-mile radius on video, we can zoom in to pinpoint location. We have CCTV footage of literally everything that has happened in Gaza. So to say that the US doesn't know is absurd. And so, yeah, they must also know that Hamas isn't taking aid, and collective punishment is not going to work, because collective punishment of civilians never in military history has forced a combatant to surrender, especially during a resistance movement, because obviously they know the civilians are going to take the brunt of it. And it's not going to change Hamas's policies. All it's going to do is to further alienate Israel in the global community. So we're wrapping up. So you are heading back to the Middle East from the United States to work for an NGO, and I think I wanted to give you the opportunity to plug it at the very end.
Well, honestly, it's one of the NGOs. Like, there's like multiple NGOs that we are trying to do as much as we can to help people in crisis, and specifically children after disasters and wars. We'll release more information about it very, very soon on my social platforms, if I have any left. We don't know. I might just release it on yours. Like, I'll message you. Instagram is really taken down. Like, they started a new policy, and then now they're taking content by the masses. So just be careful, guys. Keep changing those letters, and keep cheating that algorithm, because we want this conversation to stay. We want this to continue, and without your effort and people like you, Greg, this is just going to be back on on CNN. Like, that's it. We're going to hear the news from CNN again, and we saw where that took us the first time.
Yeah. The legacy media is a real bitch. The New York Times got a Pulitzer for their reporting on October 7th. So that is All right. Well, okay. So you can text me what you want to send for the NGO that you're going to go over there to support and what they do, and I will link it in the description if anyone is interested, as well as your social media details. So I think
I do have one question for you. I know it's your show, but I always want to ask. I'm asking every American.
Okay, send it.
They are hurt. Like, they are coming after us aggressively as the Palestinians who have struggled from the war and like being displaced from Palestine because of Israeli occupation, and came to other countries like the US, and they are saying that we are, as a result to what is happening to us, they're blaming us to the issues with the Biden might lose in the elections, and they're blaming it on us. And I'm actually being attacked by people. They were like, you're going to get us Trump again? It's your fault. Like, it's the Palestinian people's fault. What would you say? I want to know.
I mean, this is just a liberal tactic. So everyone says like white nationalism is a supremacist ideology, but liberalism is literally a white supremacist ideology as well. It just pretends to have like valued personal freedom and choice and people's right to make up their own mind and vote, but it's all lies. Like, they are more concerned about maintaining their own privilege and their own rights than they are about Palestinians being killed. So they only care about the Palestinian issue within the context of how it affects them, and they are resentful of the Palestinian issue because it means they're going to get Trump again. So I don't really give a fuck what liberals think, because they're assholes. So
I would like this section of the episode for me to share, because I am sick of it.
What I say is like, okay, so you know what you could have done since October? Show up to protest, BDS, pressure the Biden administration to stop doing literally a fucking genocide, and maybe he would have shifted his policy. But instead, you wanted to go have your pumpkin spice lattes and pretend like you're not actually part of this world. So fuck you. Deal with Trump. He's the president you deserve. And you know what? I'm an accelerationist, which means like I'm ready for the downfall to come and the revolution to happen sooner. So Trump's just going to speed it up. I'd rather it happen when I'm in my mid 40s than like when I'm 60. So let's go, because I can still get it in my 40s, I think. So.
Well, I want to thank you for giving me an answer that I'm not sure I can use, but I will play it for them. I'll send it as an answer.
You can be more diplomatic than I am.
So. I won't, but honestly, because like I am sick of people as of like 9 months of this, us watching our people. We haven't been even able to grieve. We haven't been able to, you know what I mean? Every single day there's a massacre. If you feel like I need a second to just like think of like what's going on in the world, there's a new massacre that has happened. Thousands of massacres so far that has been happening, and like we're exhausted, and then now we're being attacked because we're the reason why. First of all, first time Trump was in office, it wasn't our fault. So it's just like, you guys did that. That was not on us. But right now we're being blamed for it, and then everyone just keeps calling for their peace. They want peace. They just they can't wait for us to have peace in Palestine so they can get rid of this issue. Well, peace is not going to do it anymore. We don't want peace. We want justice. We want freedom. So
They're so thoughtful.
I guess if you're not going to help us, we're just going to have to do it alone.
Yeah. And in the meantime, everybody gets Trump. Okay. You didn't want to stop collective punishment in Gaza. Well, now you're gonna have to deal with your own collective punishment by listening to that orange goblin for another 4 years. So
it's gonna be so painful.
I know it's gonna suck.
It's gonna be so painful.
I'm mentally preparing myself for it. I'm gonna vote third party just because and just prepare myself. So
here's an option: you can move to a different country for 4 years and return.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the means to do so, yeah. But a lot of people are going to be stuck here. So I want to thank you so much for coming on and detailing the experience of what's going on in Gaza and helping to debunk more of the military propaganda that just keeps trying to gaslight us. So thank you so much for coming on. This is Zeena Aqel. I will link her socials down below so you can follow her posts. And see you guys on the next one. Cheers, y'all.
Thank you.
You've got
Why
balloons
did
there.
balloons?
I don't know. That's crazy.
How did I get balloons? I didn't even know that.